Welcome everyone to the final game of the India versus USA match here in Texas, where we have Hikaru Nakamura taking on the world champion Domaraju Gukesh. USA has been dominating the match and the score is 4-0 in their favor. So they have won the overall match, but a battle between the current world number 2 and the world champion is always super exciting. The first game is 10 minutes. In case of a draw, we move to a 5-minute game, and then a draw, we move into a 1-minute game. Let's see how things pan out. Right now, a handshake, and off we go. Hikaru, with the white pieces, opens the game with 1 e4. Gukesh responds with the Karokan. The clock is slightly different. You can see the players smiling there because they have to press a button which is slightly away from the clock. And Hikaru plays pawn to d4. Gukesh responds back with d5. And Hikaru taking his time here. He wants to make sure that he plays the right opening. He can go for the advanced variation. He goes for the exchange variation by taking on d5. Bishop comes out to d3. Knight to c6, attacking the pawn. The pawn pushes forward, defending the pawn on d4, and now e6. This is a very interesting move. You've closed your own bishop, but you can get your bishop out quickly. Knight e7, and then later try for f6, e5 in the center. The bishop comes to f4. Gukesh offers the bishop for a trade. Hikaru is shaking his head. The crowd is cheering there in the background. Knight comes out to e7. And white simply castles here. And Gukesh also castles. It looks like black's position is slightly worse because of the passive bishop on c8, but he will go for f6 and e5 later on. Hikaru pausing here. Gukesh making very good use of time. You can see the heart rate meter there. Hikaru at 126 beats per minute. Gukesh 94. And Hikaru egging the crowd to make some noise there. The knight goes to g6. After all, it's an exhibition game, and so there's a lot of element where the fans need to be sort of brought in and they can enjoy here. That's what Hikaru is trying for. And he's taking his time because Gukesh is coming in with knight f4, and Hikaru has a few options here. He can think about going h4, h5, starting to push the h-pawn. There's also queen to b1, a very interesting move, placing the queen and bishop on this diagonal, avoiding putting the queen on c2 as that can be attacked by the rook on c8. And now look at that time, Hikaru down to 8 minutes. He goes pawn to c4, and that move isn't particularly the best. You can see Gukesh being slightly startled there. Why did Hikaru play c4? Because after pawn takes, knight takes, the d pawn is isolated. But I think Hikaru is simply banking upon the fact that his pieces are very active here. So maybe you don't take the pawn. The best move here is queen f4, trying to attack the d4 pawn. But not so easy move to play. And now it's Gukesh's time to think. For Gukesh, his heart rate is very stable. But then again, we've seen in many events that Gukesh's heart rate is like in the 70s and 80s. So here, it's almost 100. Which means that he's also feeling a bit of pressure. Rook comes to c8. And now Hikaru can actually play pawn to c5. Gaining space and making the game super ambitious here. But Hikaru goes pawn to a3. He doesn't play c5. He goes pawn to a3, and perhaps his idea is c5 next, followed by b4, b5. Gukesh takes the pawn, knight takes c4, attacking the queen. Queen goes back to b8. And let's see what happens here now. If Gukesh gets rook d8, bishop e8, and starts putting pressure on d4, he can very well be better here. But Hikaru is smiling here. The crowd often cheering with some very interesting things like, "Let's go, Hikaru, let's go. Let's go, Hikaru, let's go." And for now, it seems like Hikaru is not really keen on kind of pressing for much here, because a draw would mean that they go into, look at that, d5 move, trying to play for equality there. Pawn takes, bishop takes g6, and h takes, he takes the pawn on d5. Have to be slightly careful here as Gukesh. Bishop e6 runs into rook takes e6 with a winning position for white. So you can't go bishop e6, maybe bishop f5 or bishop g4 can be played, but it's important to note that there is no way that this battle between Gukesh and Hikaru would end in an eventual draw, because a 10-minute game ending in a draw would mean that they play a 5-minute game. A 5-minute game ending in a draw means they would play a 1-minute game. They play a 1-minute game until a winner is found in one of the games. And now Gukesh thinking a bit. He can go rook c d8 to defend the bishop here and then move it away. But he could also potentially just, I'm a bit worried about bishop f5 because knight d6 attacks the rook and the bishop, but you can pin it. He goes bishop g4, one step ahead, trying to attack the knight on f3. And Hikaru there with a heart rate of 133 and 6 minutes 46 seconds. And Gukesh is smiling as well. That's why this entire event is so amazing for the spectators, because they are able to interact with the players. They are able to actually impact the game as well. It does feel like a football game or a cricket game where you have the crowd cheering on. And Gukesh takes on e5. And now you can take back with the knight. But then if knight takes, there's bishop e6 and black is completely fine here. So let's see if if Hikaru takes with the knight or the queen. You can also take with the rook. But I'm not a big fan of rook takes e5, as then bishop takes f3 would happen. He takes with the queen. And now bishop takes f3. Queen takes on b8, rook b8, he takes back, and we are now in a rook endgame where it's equal material. Yes, Gukesh's pawn structure slightly better, but that's not good enough to get the full point. So rook e8, he takes on e8, rook takes, and now rook c1 played. Gukesh brings the king, rook jumps into c7, and now check, rook goes back, he comes back to c7, and they are repeating. Hikaru looks away and presses the claim button and tells the arbiter that I'm claiming a draw here. The arbiter comes in and Gukesh accepts the draw. The 10-minute game ends in a draw, smiles on the face. Let's hear what the players are speaking to each other.
Yeah, I always wanted to hit the actual pod. It's very hard.
Also, like when you press the sides, it's not easy.
You went in front of me.
We now move into game number 2. Gukesh and Hikaru are back. It's 5-minute game with Hikaru having the white pieces once again. Another important rule in this format is that the players cannot play the first move that they played in the previous game. So 1 e4 cannot be played by Hikaru. A handshake here, and off we go. f4 played here. The bird's opening. Knight to f3, knight f6. This was also the move that Levy played against Sagar in their previous game. So Hikaru actually being slightly inspired by Gotham chess. Pawn to d4, bishop comes to g7. And this is a very nice position for black. A very solid setup there. Castles for black. White goes knight to c3 and pawn to c4. He takes with the bishop, and Gukesh quickly strikes the center with c5. Very nice chess there by Gukesh. If you take pawn takes pawn, he may well take the queen here, but even queen a5 makes a lot of sense, attacking the c5 pawn. So Hikaru taking his time there. Let's see what he comes up with. He's thinking, he's smiling. The crowd is cheering on. And he plays short castles. Gukesh takes on d4. Knight takes on d4. And now maybe a6 makes a lot of sense. Gukesh goes bishop d7. He's preparing knight c6 so that after knight c6 he can take back with the bishop. The pawn on e3 is a slight weakness. The square on e4 is slightly weakened as well. And now time is ticking down. Hikaru has 3 minutes 44 seconds. Gukesh has 4 minutes 33 seconds. A win here for Gukesh would be quite special, beating Hikaru. But it's never easy to beat Hikaru. A 1 minute lead on the clock. Wow, that's something. And Hikaru is not sure how to continue. I guess he wants to play pawn to e4, but he goes king h1, knight c6, pawn to b3. That's not a good move. That's not at all a good idea. Now you take on d4. Look at this. Take on d4. Or maybe you can go knight g4. Attacking e3. Unleashing the bishop here. Gukesh takes. E takes d4. Instantly played. The pawn is isolated. The square on d5 and e4 are a bit weak. A very interesting move here is definitely e6. There's also a6, rook c8 possible. He goes bishop to c6. And now you want to play knight to d5, e6. All very logical moves. Let's imagine you go bishop b2 here, then e6. You have stopped f5, you stopped d5. Black's position is overwhelmingly good. f5 played by Hikaru. And that's very logical because he now stops e6 from coming in. He's also putting pressure here on the f7 point. You can of course bank on Hikaru to find the best moves to put pressure. But a good idea now for Gukesh is to go for a6 followed by b5, rook c8. This seem like very logical moves. And Gukesh also burning his time. He's now down to 3 minutes 20 seconds. Hikaru has 2 minutes 55 seconds. Keeping that time lead would be very useful. There's also potentially another trade that you can do with knight to e4. Actually, knight e4 is such an interesting move because if you take knight takes e4, then queen takes d4 check. Oh, it's not a check. You're just attacking the rook. Interesting. Interesting. Too many possibilities for Gukesh to make it work as he goes down below Hikaru's time. 2 minutes 45 seconds. Needs to make a move quickly. There's no increment here until you reach 1 minute on the clock. Then you have 1 second increment. Knight d5 played. Hikaru takes. Bishop takes and plays his bishop to g5. So he's putting pressure on the e7 point. Also threatening knight takes d5, knight queen takes d5, bishop e7. Gukesh brings his bishop back to c6. d5 not possible. c3 knight is hanging. What will Hikaru do here? Because the d4 pawn is hanging. He can put further pressure with rook e1 here. But no, then queen d4 and c3 would be hanging. Hikaru is not happy with his position. He's smiling. Difficult to decode what he's feeling here. He's just being entertained by the crowd here. Gukesh having a very solid 100 as his heart rate per minute. Hikaru at a solid 130. He goes bishop e3. Not a happy move to make for sure. Bishop e3. The bishop is now passive. Gukesh goes queen d7. He's wanting to double down on the d file with rook d8. Hikaru pushes his pawn to d5. He's attacking the bishop here, but the knight is hanging on c3. Can we take bishop takes c3 here? You can, but actually after d takes c6, queen takes c6, there could be potential problems on the c file with rook c1. So d5 played, and now it's Gukesh who's thinking. He goes bishop to b5, attacking the rook. Knight takes b5 taken, and you can take on a1, but queen b5 played. And Hikaru now thinking here, he goes rook to c1, quickly getting his rook into the game. Gukesh completely focused here. The time is 1:41. He goes rook d8, attacking the d5 pawn. Can we chop off the pawn on a7? That might be a bit too much. Like bishop a7 could trap the bishop with b6. He goes instead rook c5. Gukesh quickly comes back queen d7. He's maintaining a 15-second lead on the clock. His heart rate is more stable. His position is better. Can Gukesh beat Hikaru? F takes g6. He takes back with the f pawn. Slightly weird. Rook takes rook. He takes back. Rook takes f8. And now the bishop comes back to g1. Well, the back rank could be potentially an issue there. And now bishop g1 played. Gukesh taking his time. He needs to be quick. Down to a minute. I think Gukesh mainly took with the f pawn, slightly unusual. He goes b6. Hikaru comes back. Rook c2 isn't leaving. Goes rook c1. Places his rook on c2. And now rook f5 attacking the d5 pawn. Rook comes to d2 defending there. Bishop e5. And Hikaru nods his head in approval. He's liking the way in which Gukesh is pressing here. But can Gukesh outplay Hikaru here? He is less than a minute now. Queen c4 coming up. Pawn to h5 played. Both players under a minute now. It's bullet chess. King h7. Rook to f2 played. Offering a trade of rooks. Gukesh takes it. Bishop takes f2. And now queen f5. Another trade offered. And this position could be a draw, but could also be a win for black, because for the simple reason that the d5 pawn is weak and the king could quickly come in here to attack it. So Hikaru has to make this important choice. He takes the queen. Gukesh takes back pawn to g3. He wants to get his king into the game. Gukesh gets king g6, king g2. Hikaru looking confident. Both players have 38 seconds on the clock. Gukesh trying to figure out what to do. He wants to come here to e5, but king f6, there's a check. He goes f4. King f3 played. He brings his king up one square. Bishop to d4. Takes the pawn. Pawn takes pawn. And bishop e5 played. Bishop comes back to e3. Bishop c3, and now once again stopping the king from coming in. Bishop b4. Excellent move by Gukesh. Somehow, if he gets bishop d6 and king e5, he's winning. Bishop b8 played. Player pawn to a6, Gukesh. Bishop a7, play bishop c5. Blocking here. Bishop b8, go bd6, and then block the bishop when it goes to a7 with bishop c7. And Gukesh makes a claim there that Hikaru pressed the clock, and he gets 15 extra seconds. And he's asked to continue the game. b5 played, bishop comes to d4. Hikaru now low on clock, but Gukesh missed his chance. There was a huge one where he could have trapped the bishop. Bishop on a7, he goes bd4. And now bishop e5, he goes bishop to c5. It's not possible to break through here while Gukesh's time is running down. a4 played, fixing the pawn on black square, and Hikaru is like, well, it's a draw now, Gukesh. Bishop e5, He goes bishop b6 after the pawn. And bishop c3 trying to protect the pawn. Once again threatening king e5. Hikaru stops it. Bishop to b4. And king to e3 played. And now bishop d6. He takes the pawn on a5. King e5 played. King comes to f3. Takes the d5 pawn. Bishop comes back. Pushing the pawn. Bishop e1 by Hikaru. Pushing the pawn even further. And Gukesh goes king c4. Look at the time on the clock. King e3. He takes the pawn on g3. And it's a draw. The players are now playing until the bare kings are left. King takes h5 and a draw is agreed. We go down to bullet chess. Wow, that will be super exciting. But great play here by Gukesh as he manages to pull Hikaru to a draw in a 5-minute game. He was winning there at some point, but it was not so easy to figure it out. And Hikaru's like, where are my pieces? In fact, there's another set of pieces kept there just so that if under promotion happens, the players have all the pieces. And Hikaru and Gukesh come back for 1-minute game. This could very well be the final game. 1-minute bullet chess. Both players adjust their clocks. And Gukesh looks super confident there. Hikaru as confident as ever. Bullet is his forte, but that's online chess. How do you play when it is over the board? It's 1 minute plus 1 second increment. And he goes pawn to b4, the Polish opening. Goes a3, d5, e3, bishop d6. Look at the speed at which both players are moving. Super quick. Pawn to d4 and Hikaru seems to have gotten a very nice opening position. Pawn to a5 attacking the pawn on b4. He pushes forward, bishop goes back. Pawn to b5 played. Look at the heart rate there. 149 for Hikaru. He's feeling the pressure, but he's so quick. Pawn takes pawn, bishop takes. And pawn to b6. Gukesh down to 45 seconds. Knight goes back to b8. This pawn on c6 is a very strong passer. But Gukesh is playing around it. He goes knight a6, castles, jumps in with his knight to b4. And knight to e5 played. Gukesh down to 40 seconds. He goes bishop d6. Rook c1 trying to push forward. Knight e8 trying to blockade the pawn. What a game. What a complex battle we have on our hands. And Hikaru goes knight to d3. Knight c7. He takes the knight. Pawn takes pawn. The bishop comes back to d3. But now a4 is weak. Bishop a6. Excellent move by Gukesh. Takes. Rook takes a6. Black is clearly better here. Hikaru shaking his head. He's down on the clock. Also, the position is bad. But Hikaru, known for his amazing speed skills, pushes his pawn to e4. Also, not a great move. Gukesh goes queen a8, putting pressure on the c6 and a4 pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Take it with the knight. He takes it. Knight takes d5. Excellent position for Gukesh. Hikaru down to just 20 seconds, goes rook c4. But now you can pick up the pawn on a4. No, he goes rook c8. g3 played, attacking the bishop. Where will the bishop go to? Comes back to b8. And Hikaru ready to go on an attack. Goes queen c2. Takes the pawn on a4. Knight g5, threatening a check here. g6 played. Rook comes to c1. Totally winning position for Gukesh. Once again, rook a2. Very strong. Plays bd6. Queen e2, Hikaru moving fast, 15 seconds on the clock. He's really a speed monster. Rook d2, Gukesh playing slow, hesitating there. Down to 12 seconds. Takes the pawn on c6. Hikaru goes rook d1. Oof, this position is so bad. Queen b7, he goes and takes the b3 pawn. Gukesh attacks the queen. Queen f3 played. And now rook c4, he brings the knight back. Bishop goes back. Knight to c5. Queen c8, look at Hikaru, the way he's playing. He's moving up on the clock. Gukesh pushes the pawn. Rook a1 played. Takes the knight. Pawn takes. Gukesh only 4 seconds on the clock, but he's better still. Completely better. Hikaru has 9 seconds. Rook comes to c2, bishop d4, rook c4. He moves forward, h5, played a blunder here because queen d7. Hikaru, will he move his king forward? Yes, king h2. Plays king h7, chops off the rook on d5, moves his queen in. It's mate in one threat and takes the pawn, brings the queen back. Queen e6. He moves his bishop backwards. The position is once again equal. He takes, and king g8 brings the queen up. Queen f6, check, king comes up and a checkmate. Wow! And Hikaru picks up the black king and hurls it in the crowd. All done their victory, making the crowd cheer for him. What a win for Hikaru there at the end. It was incredible as he shakes hands with his teammates. Gukesh places the pieces. Arjun goes back and pats him on the back there. Hikaru there really happy. That last thing that which he did of throwing the king into the crowd was something that was discussed in the team meetings on the previous day. The organizers had said, make it a show. If you manage to win, it's the last game. We don't need the king anymore. And Hikaru throws it in the crowd. Well, Gukesh can be upset with himself because he was better on so many occasions, but also can be proud of himself for the fact that he gave Hikaru such a huge run for his money. And look at Hikaru there with his team members Levi, Fabi, Carissa and Tani. They played really well, scoring 5-0 victory against Team India, whereas the Indian team, and look at the crowd there, close to 1,000 to 1,100 people there in the crowd cheering for chess. Very rare to see such a thing. Generally, chess is played in quiet spaces, but this event, Checkmate, India versus USA, was surely something that was new for all the chess fans out there, as the Indian team have a lot of thinking to do, but they'll be waiting for the revenge match in India, which will happen next year.